Hey everybody, thanks for checking out this crafting and doodling video. Today we're gonna make some clay magnets. What I mean by that is we're gonna make some cool decorations for your fridge or wherever else you can stick a magnet. We're gonna use clay. I'm gonna be using Sculpey clay. So I'm gonna be sculpting shapes with this clay that I like to use it because you can make things that that really last. If you put this clay in the oven and bake it, I think it's like 275 degrees or something. You can check the instructions on the packaging if you have some Sculpey clay at home. But when you bake Sculpey clay, it hardens and it becomes, it's still kind of fragile. Like you can break it easily if you're not careful with it, but it becomes a lot more safer to use for like crafting and stuff, and it's non-toxic as well. So you can make a lot of really cool stuff with Sculpey clay today. I'm going to show you guys how we can do like a little drawing. We're going to make like a template for our magnet before we make it, and we're going to use the shapes in our drawing to use the shapes in our clay sculpture to translate those from our drawing. I'm going to show you guys how easy it is to do that. When you just sort of have the shapes in your mind, that's what you want to do. So let's get started. Oh, I should mention another thing though. If you don't have Sculpey clay at home, a good alternative material to use is Model Magic clay. Now that's a clay that you don't have to bake. If you just let it sit out overnight, it'll harden. And it's not quite as hard, not quite as durable as Sculpey clay gets when you bake it, but it gets also very nice. It gets to a hard enough consistency that you could glue a magnet to it, which is what we're going to want to do at the end. I don't have any magnets with me today, so I won't be able to show you guys how that's done, but that's pretty easy. I think you guys can figure it out by yourselves. So let's start with our design here. I'm going to use, so you can see we have a limited number of colors here. We've got some brown clay, some white clay, black, gray, blue, and red. So I decided I'm going to make a little doggy magnet. So I'm going to draw out my doggy first on the dry erase board here, so we can look back at it and we don't get lost while we're sculpting our figure. So it's not going to be a, I think it's just going to be like a dog's head, like with he's going to have like a collar. So we're not going to do the whole dog's body. It's just going to be like a little cartoon dog head. So let's start with a fun shape that we want to do for the dog's head. Kind of like a peanut shape. Let's see, we've got a kind of a circle at both ends with a little dip in the middle there. So that'll be our dog's head. So we're going to make a shape like that to be his head. Then I'm going to draw his ears like this. I'm going to color that in so I know that this is a different color of clay that we're going to use for these ears. So we're going to do an ear on that side and an ear on this side. And of course I don't really need to make the whole shape because part of it's obscured there. That's where our dog's eyes are going to go. So I'm going to draw a circle. And a circle there. And that's going to be the base for our dog's eyes. So we don't have to put much detail there yet. We can do that later. A lot of this is going to be just flattening circles, kind of like getting clay into nice rounded shapes and then flattening them into these particular oblong shapes that we want. So let's do another circle-ish kind of shape, but it's going to have a little, kind of like a diamond shape to it, like a little tip at the bottom there. That's going to be our dog's nose. All right. So I'm going to leave a little bar of white there to remind ourselves to make a little bar of white. So this looks pretty good so far. What else do we need? I think we're just going to want a little strip down here, like for the dog's collar. And the dog will have little studs on their collar. That, we can use our gray clay for that. And like a little dog tag down here. Okay. Now it's looking like a dog, right? We've got all our shapes in place. So I think that's a good enough map for us to get started with. Let's move these markers here. And let's get our clay out. So we're gonna start with some white clay for that base shape. Okay, so we're gonna start with some white clay here. Now we wanna get it nice and soft to mold. So we're just gonna roll it in our hands, kind of squish it around, get it nice and malleable so that we can make it do what we want. All right, so I'm gonna go like this, kind of roll it in between my hands. You can see that helps me make it into a nice ball. And go like that. Oh, I'm going too fast for the camera. All right, but you can see now that I've got this nice little ball. So let's take this. You see I've got some wax paper taped to my table here because the clay can get a little sticky, can kind of leave residue behind. So I'm going to flatten this down because we want that back, the back of our sculpture here, we want it to be nice and flat so that when the clay hardens, we can glue our glue our magnet to it nice and easily. So now that I've got it flattened down, you can see I'm going to try and sort of shape that middle, try to get that oblong shape. So I'm just going to sort of pinch the middle here. Pinch it just a little bit. And then I'm going to do some more flattening once I've got those pinches made. See, now it's starting to look like the shape that we drew. Looking like that dog head shape. All right, so I'm gonna sort of round the corners a little bit more. Now, there's no need to rush. You can just keep on trying until you get it shaped how you want. See, now that's a lot more closer to our drawing. So let's just round it a little more. All right, and I'm going to flatten this part up here. All right, now see we've got this shape here, looking like we're going to use that for our dog's head. So you can see the difference there, or not the difference, the resemblance. All right, so I'm going to take this shape here. I'm going to put it back down on the wax paper and flatten it so we can get that flat shape back on the back. All right. Now we got a nice Nice rounded shape there for our dog's head. So we've got that back part, this nice back part is nice and smooth and flat. That's going to be the back. So let's remember to put that on the back and put everything we do on the top here. Okay, so that's our shape, our starting shape. I think we want to do our dog's eyes next, but here's a question. What colors are we going to use for the dog's eyes? So you might want to use white for the dog's eyes, right? Which is what I want to do. But how are you going to see the dog's eyeballs if they're white and they're on this white head shape? So we're going to put a little bit of brown down first, so it looks like maybe the dog has like a patch of brown fur and his eyes are resting on top of the brown fur. So that's what we're going to do to make our eyeballs show up. Now this brown clay, this is rough too, coming right out of the package, so we got to soften it up like we did before with the white clay. So let's get it nice and doughy. And you know, we're only going to pinch, we're just going to pinch a little bit here, enough, because once you flatten it out, it's going to get a lot more, can take up a lot of space when it's flattened. See, even this is too much, so I'm going to put some back. Take some off of this piece, put it back in our brown clay, and then I'm going to roll this a little bit into a ball and then just squish it flat between my fingers. So you can see how big it's going to get and how thick the clay is before, because you don't want to put it down on here until you're satisfied with the shape and the size. So let's see, let's do a little shape test here. Let's see how, if we were to put this here, I think that's a good size. Yeah, I think so. So let's do that. We'll just kind of place that there. We're not going to push down hard yet. And let's make another one for the dog's other eye. But we're going to use even less clay this time because we want it to be smaller. And we don't want it to be a whole circle. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to make that shape that we need? Because we don't really need it to be a circle. So let's take one of the edges here. We're just going to push it flat down onto the table. And that'll make it a straight edge on our otherwise rounded piece. See there? So now our round circle has a straight edge on that side, and that will be the side that faces the other side. All right, so I've got two little eyeball zones there. I'm going to flatten out that top a little bit so it's more in line with the shape. All right, now you can see up close, see that brown? They're kind of just like laying next to each other, huh? We don't want it to look like that. We want it to look like the dog has fur. So I'm just going to softly kind of just stroke that middle part, and you'll see, stroke it back and forth until it disappears. And you don't have to push too hard, you can just use your finger, just brush it back and forth. And see, now it's gone. Looks nice and smooth. All right, now let's put that white part for the dog's eyes. Let's get a little bit more white clay. I'm going to kind of clean off my fingers a little bit so I don't get the white clay all brown. But that's okay, because when we rub and mix this white clay, it's gonna mix in whatever little bits of brown we have. It's not gonna make a big difference. You won't be able to see it anyway. So let's do just like we did for the little brown circles. We're going to pinch off a little piece and make another little circle. And just squish it nice and flat. And let's see how flat that is, if that's what we want. Because now we're getting past the point of no return. Because we don't want to have to pull this apart. All right, let's see. How's that look? Oh, that's a little too big, huh? That's just a little too big. So let's take some out. Oh, actually, let's just split this one in half. Let's just pinch it into two and try to make those pieces flat. See how big they get. All right, so now we've got a flat circle, a little smaller one. Let's see how that looks. Oh yeah, I think that's what we want, huh? There's more brown visible there. So let's take just a little bit out of this one, because that other one is smaller in the first place, right? So we're going to do the same thing. Squish that into our little circle with our fingers. And then put it next to the other eye. All right, now we're getting somewhere. So let's do the same thing with the whites of our eye. We're gonna rub that little, kind of just brush that middle part back and forth very softly. It's gonna disappear. All right. Now where do you think we should go? Let's look back at our drawing. See where we can go from here. So we've got our dog's head pretty much good to go. Maybe the best thing to do next would be his ears, huh? So let's get some shapes for his ears. And I think for that we're going to use the black clay. So let's get some of this black clay. And we're going to have to mold it up nice and soft. This clay has just been sitting in my house for so long that it hasn't been used. It needs to get softened up. Okay, so let's take a little piece and let's do what we've been doing. Make a nice little ball. Roll it in your palms. And you can kind of feel it round and take shape in your palm, so you know when it's done, when it's turned into a ball, because you'll feel it. So now it's a little ball. Let's sort of flatten it. But let's flatten it in a way that gives it shape, kind of like we did with the dog head. See how I'm kind of shaping this top part into like a little teardrop? See, it kind of looks like a teardrop now. So that'll be the skinny part of the dog's ear. And we'll try to keep that part skinny, and we'll flatten out this circular part. So I'm going to smush the circle part in between my fingers and sort of just shape this middle part down here as we flatten up here, so it stays in that teardrop shape. All right. All right, that looks like the dog's ear. Let's see how it looks on our, before we press too hard, let's kind of just lay it there and see how it looks. Looks like it could be a little bit bigger, huh? It's kind of small on our dogs. Our dog has, well, our drawing of our dog has kind of small ears, but they're a little more boxy. This doesn't really, this ear is too long and skinny compared to the ear that we drew. So let's try again. Let's make it a little more boxy. So how do we make a square instead of a circle? Well, that's easy too. We can do like we did before when we squished that edge using the table, but we'll just do that for all four sides until it looks like a square. So we've got our circle here. Let's flatten it out. So it's nice and big to be our dog's ear. And yeah, okay, that's a little too thin. It's getting too thin there. Let's squish the edges like that, so that's flat. Now we're just gonna rotate it, pick it up and rotate it, and do the other edge. Now let's do this bottom edge. All right. Now that's looking a little more like the shape that we drew, right? Not so much of a square, because we'd have to do this top one. But a dog's ear doesn't look like a square. It's just kind of almost like a square. So let's see how this one looks on our dog. Oh yeah, I think that looks a lot nicer, don't you think? That looks more like a dog's ear. All right, so let's flatten that part out. Don't press too hard because you don't want to smush it into the other colors. You don't want your colors to get smushed together. But we do want that ear. See how the ear is kind of hanging off of the main piece. So when we bake it, we want to make sure that it doesn't get sort of fragile and vulnerable. Because if your piece of your sculpture breaks off, then you'll have to start all over. You don't want to glue a magnet to your broken sculpture. So there we go. We got our dog's first ear attached. Now let's do another one on the other side. For this one, we're going to do it a little different because let's look at our drawing again. Let's see how this, see how we kind of don't see his whole ear because it's covered up by his head. So we're going to put this other piece for his ear behind his head instead of on top with the other pieces. So this little second ear will just be a little bit smaller. And we're going to put it underneath our base piece. Okay. So this part up top, I'm going to make sure that that part is wide enough that it sticks out from underneath. And then we're going to take this white piece and just kind of aim where we want it to go, how we want it to look. And then push from above down onto that ear. And when we pick it up, oh, uh-oh, gotta pick up the ear too, because it's pick up the ear from the back. So you can see how we kind of stuck that second ear to the bottom of the white piece. And it looks like that. All right, so we've got our dog's ears, we've got his eyes, and we're still working with the black clay, so let's make his nose now. So we want to make his nose sort of like a little triangle. So that shape is also easy to make because it's just got 3 straight edges. So we're going to take a little bit of black, like we did before, roll it nice and round, and then flatten it into our nose shape. So our dog has a big old schnoz, so he's got plenty of room for a big nose. So let's make that nose into the little diamond shape that we did before. And we're not even going to use the table this time, we're just going to use our fingers. So see how I'm kind of just pinching that little edge like we did before into a teardrop shape. But we don't want it to look like a teardrop, we want it to look like a diamond. So we're going to flatten that top part too. Kind of push the bottom into the top to make it more flat. Now there we go. That's the shape we want, right? Kind of like Superman's symbol on his chest. Oh, let me put it in front of my hand and maybe you can see it better. There you go. So we've got a little kind of teardrop base. It looks like a heart more than a teardrop though. So let's flatten that out just a little bit more. Put it on our dog's schnoz down here. I'm going to kind of push it in to take the shape of the outline of the dog too. Oh, oh no. All right. So there we've got his nose. He's starting to come together. So now we've got 3 more colors that we haven't used yet. We've got red and blue and gray. And we've got to make the dog's collar and we've got to make some pupils for the dog. So I think what we'll do is we're going to use the red to make his collar, and then we're going to use the gray to make the little studs on his collar, and then we'll use some blue at the very end to give him some pupils in his eyes. Oh, and what's another thing I almost forgot? We're going to put a little white bar on his nose there too to make it look shiny. So I think our last big piece we need to do is the collar. So let's get the red clay out and mold up some red clay here. So this time we're going to make kind of like a rectangle shape. It's kind of like a long, skinny shape that we'll use for the dog's collar. Because we're not going to wrap it around. We're not really making a neck for the dog. We're just kind of putting it at the bottom to imply that he's wearing a collar. So let's take a little bit. Let's pinch our little bit here. And let's do this time. Let's use the table. We're going to just roll the clay. See how I'm rolling it into like a little log shape with my fingers, between my fingers? Roll it into like a little log shape. And now let's measure it. Let's see how it You gotta be careful because we got red on our fingers from the red clay. We don't want our white dog to get red on him. So I'm gonna press the back like this. Let's measure. So that's a bit long. See, like, I think it's a little too long for the bottom of our dog. So I'm gonna clip a little bit off of the end here. Put it back in. And now we've got a shorter, that's about how long we want our collar to be. So now I'm gonna start flattening it like we did with our circles between my fingers. And it's gonna turn into like a flat sort of rectangle shape. There we go. Oh, kind of looks like a tongue too, right? Like a dog's tongue or something. So we've got this little collar. We're just gonna line that up at the bottom there. And I'm gonna tuck it under, just tuck it, lay it under the top bit, just a little bit. So you can see it's not attached very well to our dog yet, is it? It's kind of just laying there because it's stuck to the back. But we're going to put a little bit of reinforcement. We're going to make our studs with our gray clay and push those down so that they kind of connect the white and the red clay. So we don't need too much for this either. Let's just sort of pinch this into, let's say 4 studs. So let's get 4 little balls. Gonna put them out here, lay them out. And I think these balls might just be too big too. But let's smush these together and then we'll separate them again. So I can see there's a little bit of red residue in there. Red is another color that's hard. You kind of want to maybe wash your hands in between because it might get some red on your white. That'll ruin your sculpture. All right, so let's take out 4 little balls. Try to make them even smaller this time, because remember, we're going to squeeze them, flatten them out. 2, 3, 4. Also, I've got 5 balls here. I'm going to take away the biggest one. All right, so now we've got our 4 balls. Let's put them onto our dog's collar like so. So remember how we squish them between our fingers? We're going to do a similar thing. We're just going to squish it right onto the collar. So you got to be extra careful when you do this part because you don't want to mess up. So I'm going to take it. We're going to put the ball down where I want it to go. And then I'm just going to press, squish down into that nice little circle shape. And now it's sort of sticking the white clay to the red clay. All right, let's do another one. And then let's press down. Oh, you know what? It looks like we're running out of room on the collar. Maybe we'll just use 3 studs instead of 4 studs. So let's put that other ball away. And then let's put our last little ball down there and press. All right. Now let's lay our dog flat again. So we make sure he's keeping that flat back so we can keep him as a magnet. All right. Now, we're almost done. Our dog's looking pretty close to our drawing, right? looking pretty good. Now it's when we're gonna use our blue clay, make a couple more circles, and then a little bit of white clay, and we're gonna be done. But before we get a more blue residue on our hands, let's use our white clay and make that shiny nose part. So this part is just gonna be a little strip, kinda, we're gonna make it like we made the collar, kinda roll it between your fingers so it's like a little log. But make it even skinnier. Just make it, you know, use a little bit of clay. Make it a little skinny log, like that. Because when we push it out, we don't want it to be too distracting. We just want it to look like a little shine of light. All right, perfect. So now let's get our blue clay. Final step here. Ooh, this is hard clay too. Need to soften it up. So we only need a little bit. We're just using 2 little tiny circles that we're going to squish again. So let's take the tiniest little bit here and then take it even tinier. Just break it into 2 again. Now I've got a tiny little bit of blue clay. And let's break that into 2. And now we've got our two pupils. And we don't want to really squeeze these down too much because we want to give some definition to our dog's eye. So let's lay them down where we think they should go. Does that look about right? Yeah, I think so. So they're not totally flattened yet. Let's just give them a little push so you can see them like laying there. That'll make them easier to break off if we don't flatten them a little bit. So let's just push down just a little bit. Not so that we're flattening the blue, but that's so that we're sticking them into the eyes, into the clay below. All right. Now we've got our finished little dog sculpture here. Let's see if you guys can. It looks just like the drawing, right? Except I forgot to draw pupils on my dog's face here. There we go. So what you would do from here is, if you're using Sculpey clay at home, you would take this guy, lay him flat on a plate or some other sort of oven-safe object. You maybe ask your parents for help there, and set him in the oven for perhaps, this guy's not so big, so probably maybe 35 minutes or so. You would be able to tell if it was too long because the clay would get baked, kind of just like if you leave food in the oven too long, it gets black and brown. Well, the same thing will happen to this guy if you leave him in too long. So you can just sort of monitor him and make sure he's not getting discolored, but at least 20 or 25 minutes, I would say, for something this size. And once you take him out, he's going to be kind of stuck to that plate or that baked cooking sheet, whatever you use to bake him in the oven. He's going to be a little stuck, so you might want to use like a spatula or some other tool to like scrape him off of the bottom of that plate, and you got to be careful otherwise, because you don't want to crack your sculpture. So once you're able to peel them off, you got that nice flat back. You can use a hot glue gun or something to glue a magnet, and then you can just stick your magnet to stuff. He's sticky right now because he's still clay. But with a magnet, he can stick to anything. All right, well, if you guys make some magnets at home, if you guys make little dog magnets, or if you want to try and get experimental, do some other shapes, send us a picture. Share us on our Facebook, or send it to our the library's website. You can find our contact info there. We'd love to see the stuff that you guys make at home. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.